Just a brief introduction of Yann Vagneux. Yann Vagneux is a distinguished scholar and was born in 1976. His family comes from the region of French Alps, and he is a Catholic priest and a member of the Foreign Mission Society who has studied in Paris, Rome, and New York, and Fordham, where I've been teaching for some time, and now in Columbia, so it's very close, and I have friends there. And his doctorate dissertation in theology was published in his book Coes, which set out Trinitarian theology of Jules Montaigne, a pioneer in dialogue between Christianity and Hinduism. Yann discovered India in 1977 while living in a slum area of Madras, Chennai. 15 years later, he settled in the multi-religious city of Varanasi, where he has followed the path of contemplative Christian presence to Hinduism, as had originally been traced by his guru Jules and his Swami Abhiveksanand Henry D. Swartz. And his new book, recent book, is A Priest in Banaras. So now I request Father Yann to come and deliver the address. Thank you.
Good evening, dear friends of Kathmandu, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your presence here tonight. We have heard already the poet Yuyusu Sharma and the ambassador Gilles Bobao, and before hearing my monastic brother Swami Ekatananda, I would like to give you some short reflections on this book and the vision of this book. The Ambassador Bobao has said that we share this common love for the book, for literature. Indeed, as a Catholic priest, I am linked and attached with a book which should be translated as the library, because the Bible means in Greek the library. And I would like to quote a sentence from this big library taken almost at the end of the Bible from St. Paul. St. Paul speaks of the Christians, and he said, "You, the Christians, you are Christ's ambassador." And he explained, "You are the ambassador of reconciliation." And since I have the great privilege to receive the friendship of different ambassadors, I have always this sentence of St. Paul came back to my mind. You are ambassadors of reconciliation. We see that today in our Pope Francis, but we see that in all those who have left or will leave a huge legacy in human history, precisely because they are those ambassadors of peace. Let me recall here the Mahatma Gandhi, surely the greatest figure in the 20th century, but also Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and his friend, the Dalai Lama. All of them have been ambassadors of reconciliation and of peace. They have been builders of bridges, builders of bridges. Do you know how we say that in Latin? Builders of bridges. Pontifex, the pontiff. You know, the Pope is called the Supreme Pontiff, the builder of peace. And all those people and all of us, we are called to be also those pontiffs, those builders of bridges, especially in this broken world. More than never, it is necessary to build bridges. Because, and my small experience in my life all around the world, and especially in India, has taught me that whenever there is no meeting, whenever people are not mingling and meeting, then prejudices are starting. Prejudices against the other one that we have not met. And when the prejudices are widespreading, then the poison of hatred is starting to flow in our minds and heart. And where there is hatred, then the violence will come with all this crazy and murderous circle. Where there is no meetings, there is prejudices. Where there is prejudices, there is hatred. Where there is hatred, then comes violence with all the sorrows of the bloodshed and wars. I shouldn't say that in Nepal, because thanks to God, Nepal in all its wonderful diversity, human diversity, religious diversity, it's a country blessed with peace. Even though it's still a challenge to live together and to live this deep communion. But Nepal has this grace, and I hope that the church would understand that and develop more and more the interreligious dialogue in Nepal, because it's a blessed place. But I live in India, and you know all the controversies and sorrows going on in India. There is not a single month when we are not caught up in kind of controversies and dangas, as we say in Hindi, riots. But we shouldn't only look India in this point of view of dangas, of controversy. In French, we say that how we look at the glass. I am looking at the glass of the ambassador. Is it half empty or half full? And I do believe that India, where I have been living since 25 years, it's also a blessed place like Nepal. And Varanasi, especially, where I live since 12 years, where 8 religions are mingling day after day. Varanasi is a daily miracle, because we live together, because we mingle together, because we create friendship together, because we build bridges. Let me recall you this circle of violence. No meeting, prejudices, hatred, and violence. But how to break this process? That's a great question, no? How to break those non-ending circles of violence? Definitely not by counter-violence. And violence always wants to counter-violence. The only way shown by those great people, I was quoting the Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Pope Francis, Christ, our Guruji for Christians. The only way is not to break this circle of violence. It's not by the violence itself, but by the fragility of the bridge. By the fragility of the bridge. The bridge is always very fragile. Instead of staying each in its own shows and looking from far away with all of kind of prejudices, we need to have the courage to build bridges and to dwell on those bridges, to leave our show and to dwell on those bridges. If some of you have gone to the old cities of Europe, and I think of Firenze, Florence, this beautiful city of Italy, cradle of the European civilization, there is a bridge called the Ponte Vecchio between the two shores of the river Arno. And in the middle of those bridges, you will find houses, people dwelling in the middle of the bridge. And I think it's a beautiful image of what all of us are called to do. Of course, religions have bad reputation, and it's just also sometimes to say that. And it's not easy to be a believer today, whatever faith is ours. But let's remember that the religions are called to have a real contribution in the society. A different contribution, but a real contribution. And this contribution, I would quote Mother Teresa, and we are honored to have 2 of her daughters with us today. Mother Teresa was saying, let's make something beautiful for God and for the world. Let's make something beautiful. Let's become those seeds of reconciliations. Let's become those ambassadors of peace. And as I'm speaking of using those 2 images of the ambassador and the bridge, I would like to go a little further. You know that the bridge stands firmly on 2 shores. Last week I was contemplating the longest bridge in Nepal in Baglung, and then I went to Kushma. I was very amazed by those works, the wonder, you know. I haven't gone in the middle. I had no time at that time. It's so beautiful, standing on two shores and bridging the gap, you know. An ambassador also is like a bridge belonging to two lanes, standing on two lanes. The lanes from where he comes from and on which behalf he's an ambassador, and the lane to and the people to where he goes. And there is a time for the ambassador, but also I will speak for my own life in Varanasi. There is a time when we do not know if we are ambassador from France to Nepal, if we are ambassador of Christianity among Hindu, or if we are ambassador of Nepal among French people to help French people to discover this wonderful culture of Nepal. And sometimes I wonder, I am an ambassador of Hinduism in the midst of the Catholic Church, an ambassador of Buddhism? That's a paradox, and that's the beauty of being a bridge between two shores, being enriched by the culture of the other and enriching the other with our own culture. I beg pardon to my Sanskrit Pandit who is among us today, Premraj Neopane, for my pronunciation, but let me quote a wonderful sentence of the Rig Veda, which should preside to our lives. Ano badraha kratavo yantu vishwato. Let noble thought come to me from every side. And it is exactly what we are called to live, to be enriched by noble thoughts coming from every side. But it's a risk to take, because and to be an ambassador, secular or religious, is not an easy job, because we are going to be transformed. We are going to leave our small ponds. We are like frogs, sometimes we deal in our small ponds, to be caught up, to be led to the vast ocean, to be transformed, to be enriched, and to be led in the unknown. To accept to be led to the unknown. It is exactly what I have tried to live in Varanasi since 12 years, living along the Ghats in the holy city of Varanasi among the Pandits, being now the co-director of Maitri Bhavan, the center of the Catholic Church for interreligious dialogue, where every month we gather our Hindu, Muslims, Jain, Buddhist, Catholic friends. I have tried to live this non-ending friendship, to cross to the further shore, to dwell in the bridge with my Hindu, Muslim, Jain, and Buddhist friends. And I'm so happy when the day of Christmas, my small house in Varanasi fills up with all those friends coming from different backgrounds, different walk of life. And coming myself from Rome to Varanasi, having studied so much Christian scripture, I started to study the Hindu scriptures in Varanasi, and to receive this antique and noble tradition of Hinduism. And I have been so much transformed as a Catholic priest, because I'm a Catholic priest. And I have been so much transformed, so much enriched. Those long mornings, learning Sanskrit, word after word, working on the Upanishads, on the Bhagavad Gita. From Rome to Varanasi, and even I had the grace 3 years ago to send two of my Hindu Pandit friends of Varanasi to Rome. They wanted to do the journey, to come back to go to the place where I was coming from, and to themselves they started to open the Bible and read it. That is this dialogue, that is this way of being a religious ambassador, a bridge. The dialogue of the Catholic Church with Hinduism in such a way it has its beginning, even though it's a long story. We have our Jesuit friend Greg Sharkey here. We should remember the Jesuit Roberto de Nobili in the 17th century, who was leading a very bold dialogue life with the Hindu Brahmins of Trichinapoli in Tamil Nadu. In the 19th century, we should mention Brahmananda Upadhyaya, this Bengali Brahmin who became Christian and made these bridges between the two religions. And in the 20th century, I would like to mention two French people who are really my mentors. Jules Monchanin and his companion, Swami Abhishektananda Henri Le Sceau. You will find all those pictures in the books. They were the pioneer of this meeting of the Christian Catholic Church with Hinduism through contemplation. They established an ashram there. And I should quote many others, and I come to my book, The Indian Portraits, with a tribute to 8 lives, 8 bridges, 8 ambassadors of peace, 4 women and 4 men, whether Indian or French. Those people are a real inspiration for my life in Varanasi and here in Kathmandu. And I hope they will become an inspiration for all those who will read this book. They are an inspiration because of their courage to have gone to the frontier, to places where no Christian has gone before them. They have the courage to leave their small ponds of their own religion, to leave the fortress, and to go to the unknown. With a very bold visions, they were dreamers, and we need those dreamers in the world today. We need people with vision, as the way will remain in a very dull world. So they were dreamers, and they have become those beautiful spiritual beacons, and they have become people of peace. As I have meditated with you on the vocation of the ambassador, I should also say something on the vocation of the poet, as we have our great and beloved Yusuf Sharma among us. I should say that those 8 lives are so poetic, and I was very touched that you have underlined that, this feature of the book. Those lives are a poetry created by the Spirit, created by the absolute God who is called the poet. And let me quote here another Holy Scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 9, just the beginning of the verse. Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of God like the Puranam, the antique, the ancient, like the Anushashitaram, the ruler, but also as the Kavim, the Kavi, the poet. And when I discovered this verse in Varanasi, I asked my Panditji, but why they call God the poet here? And he told me, Kavim comes from these verbal roots of the vision. And God is the one who has the vision, but not only of the present. He is, in Sanskrit we say, he's Trikal-darshin. He knows the past, the present, and the future. Generally, we know only the present. We don't know the long past, and we don't know the future, which is very imprevisible, very unknown. But as he knows the future, he knows how the poetry will enter in the world, in those lives, and send them. This is why he is supremely the poet. And those people, those 8 seekers who have been so much transformed by the Absolute, have seen their life become beautiful poems. And they have seen their life to become very great and noble. You know, in Sanskrit, the Absolute is said Brahman. That's come from the Sanskrit root bri, to increase, to make great. And always, when I speak in France, I like to say the Brahman comes from bri, to increase, to make great. Because the religion is not a danger, can't be a danger. But the real religion will make your life great, will increase the space of your vision of your life, make you noble, make you great. And those 8 people were really great. Among them, and you will discover, I will not introduce in detail those 8 people, but you will find 3 social workers. I don't want to reduce them to be social workers, but they have really worked for the society. And as I told you, the religion should give a contribution to society. So we have Mother Teresa, so known and so much beloved. We have a Jesuit who was really the one who, thanks to whom I am here today, and Pierre Serac, he has lived 70 years in India. And we have another, he was a Canadian, but he lived in France and all around the world. Yann Vagneux, the founder of the Arch community, Asha Niketan. So those Arch communities are communities where handicapped people and non-handicapped people live together. Mother Teresa had a vision at the end of her life to welcome Hindu and Muslim missionaries of charity, not only Catholic, but she said also this work, this mission should be also gathering Hindus and Muslims. And she couldn't fulfill this dream, and Yann Vagneux has really fulfilled that, because Hindu, Muslims, Christians live together at the service of handicapped people. And the 5 other people are hermits. Swami Abhishektananda, a French monk, he spent the end of his life near the sources of the Ganges with his 2 disciples. Sister Thérèse from France became hermit in Rishikesh, and Swami Ajatananda also became hermit. And then 2 Indian women, Vandana Mataji, who was a great pioneer also of the dialogue of Christianity with Hinduism. And the last one still living, Prasanna Devi, the hermit of Mount Girnar in Gujarat. Those hermits, because generally we don't speak of the hermits because they are silent. They are the silent witnesses of the eternal, but I wanted to speak of them. Why? You know, the most important part of the boat, which gives balance to the boat and prevents the boat to capsize, is the part which is hidden in the water. We don't see that part, but it's the most essential part of the boat. Otherwise, the boat will sink. So those hermits, in such a way, they are keeping the world. They are hidden from the world, but they are keeping the balance of the world, you know, and preventing the world to be only individualistic, as the ambassador said, of France, or materialistic. And those people those hermits diving very deeply, they speak of a mystery, and Bettina Bomer, who has written the foreword, a great scholar living in Varanasi since 50 years, said those lives speak of a mystery which is our own mystery. And when we read this book speaks about you, about this light which is in the depth of your heart, about this vision of peace, which should be the motto of our lives. So going down also those, because they went very down into Hinduism and reading the scriptures, and those hermits especially, and those social workers, have entered in a greater communion, but from the depth, you know. That will be my last quotation, a very famous quotation of the Maha Upanishad. Ayam nijaha paroveti ganana lagu shetasam. Udara charitam tu, and I let you, saying Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Ganana lagu shetasam. The reflection of those who are narrow-minded says, I am nijaha, that is mine. Paro veti, and that is yours, that is different. And that is other, that doesn't belong to you. But the reflection of the Udara Charitanam, the one who is really generous, who is open, he says, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. All the world is my family. Everything belongs to me, and everything I am belongs to you. And those lives, those Indian portraits, testify about this eternal spirit and the beauty of this Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which is the best of Hinduism, but is the best of all religions. This sentence doesn't belong to any religion. They had the courage, those 8 people, to keep the flame alive, to be those bridges, to live a great, noble and meaningful lives, and to be ambassadors of peace. We need them, and we need them to teach us how to live a real life. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Yann, for this very inspiring talk. And yes, the seer, the poet as a seer who sees into the future, and the bridges it's almost a poem. The building of bridges, and it can be blown up in a minute, as you see in the world now. They blow up bridges in seconds, and it takes lives, millions of lives to build them. The holy people work all these years, all these centuries, and so we need to build bridges, we need to protect bridges, and we need to become bridges, as His Holiness, they say that a holy man becomes a bridge. And so Yann, we need you to be our bridge and build this gap between these, gulf between these worlds.